Welcome to The Explainer. With the JonBenet Ramsey case, it feels like the court of public opinion made up its mind a long, long time ago. But here's the thing. Today, we're not really investigating the crime. We're investigating the story itself. We're going to break down how the narrative we all think we know actually came to be. So what if the story we've all been told isn't the whole story? We're going to look at this huge gap between what the family was actually going through and what everyone thought they were seeing. And it makes you wonder, right? In a case totally swamped by the media, how much did our own ideas about how people should act, how they should grieve, get in the way of finding the truth? Okay, so let's get into the performance of grief. From the very first hours, it felt like the Ramseys' every move was on trial, and they were being judged against this invisible rule book, this script for how grieving parents are supposed to act. Patsy Ramsey actually wrote about this in her book. She said she was just completely overwhelmed by grief, heavily medicated, her concentration was shot, she could barely function. And yet, just a few days after her daughter's murder, the world basically expected her to get in front of cameras and, perform? Play the part of the grieving mother everyone wanted to see? And this is where you can really see that massive disconnect. On one side, you have the family's reality. They're in shock, they're exhausted, they're medicated, living a total nightmare. And they're being told they have to go public because of this swelling of suspicion. But on the other side, the public sees their unnatural composure and thinks it's suspicious. It just didn't fit the picture people had in their heads, so it was seen not as shock, but as guilt. And it wasn't just their actions, it was their words. Every single word was put under a microscope. Take John Ramsey's first big TV interview. He said, "We now have to find out why this happened." And critics just jumped all over that. They said, "See, he didn't say who, he said why." To them, that was a slip. It wasn't the question an innocent dad would ask. It sounded like he already knew who did it. So all of this intense public pressure, it basically poisoned the well from the get-go. It created this deep-seated distrust between the Ramsey family and the police, and the whole investigation became adversarial right from the start. And this timeline really highlights the huge divide that opened up. Look at this. JonBenet is found on December 26th. By January 1st, the Ramseys are on CNN. But they don't do their first formal police interviews until late April. That's a 5-month gap. And you can bet that delay became a major point of contention. It just fed all the suspicion that they had something to hide. So you had these two completely different perspectives, right? On one hand, the Ramseys saw it as self-preservation. They felt the police were biased against them from day one and were only focused on them. But the police, they saw it as stonewalling. The family lawyered up immediately, and the police chief later said that delaying those interviews was a big mistake that really hurt the most critical part of the investigation. And you can really feel that tension in this moment from Patsy's interview. Detectives are pressing her about taking a lie detector test, and she just fires back, "I'm telling you the truth, I would pass it. I'll take 10 of them. I don't care." It's so defiant, and it just perfectly captures that high stakes, us against them feeling they were living in. Okay, so as the investigation went on, the scrutiny got even more intense. The focus started to narrow down to these really tiny details and to the behavior of their surviving son, 9-year-old Burke. And one of those tiny details became a huge deal. A bowl of pineapple. Well, not a bowl, but the fact that pineapple was found in JonBenet's stomach during the autopsy. Now, why does that matter? Because it created a massive problem for the family's story, that a stranger snatched her from her bed in the middle of the night. And again, you have these two totally opposite takes on the same piece of evidence. John Ramsey's view was, hey, an intruder must have done it. He argued she would have screamed her head off if a family member woke her up to eat. But for investigators, the pineapple suggested something else entirely. It implied a family member was awake with her right before she died, which just completely blows up their timeline. Of course, that intense scrutiny didn't just stay on the parents. It fell hard on their 9-year-old son, Burke. And for 20 years, he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his reason was pretty simple and heartbreaking. He just wanted to grow up like a normal kid and escape what he called a chaotic nightmare. And it's just wild how his behavior was interpreted. Observations from a child psychologist were leaked, painting him as showing little warmth or lack of emotion. But from his perspective, he was just a normal, kind of reserved kid trying to deal with this unbelievable trauma. A perfect example, he drew a picture of his family and didn't include JonBenet. And when critics pointed to that as something significant, His explanation was just a kid's explanation. She was gone, so I didn't draw her. It's a child's simple logic crashing into a world of adult suspicion. So when you step back and look at it all, what truths were intentionally concealed here? You have the performance of grief, the strategy of the lawyers, the scrutiny of the investigation. It all became this battle of narratives. And that leaves us with a pretty chilling question, doesn't it? When our perception of someone's behavior is treated like hard evidence and every single move is viewed with suspicion, what truths get buried in the process? And maybe get buried forever?